This refresher training is for Science Unit 1, Lesson 7, Taken Science Quizzes. In this lesson, students will prepare for, take, and learn from a science quiz. So we'll need to understand the task, and this will be a group quiz. So it's a little bit different than when they may have taken ever before. And they need to understand the role of peer evaluation, because part of the group process will be not only taking the quiz, but evaluating the work of people from their group. So the first thing that teachers need to do is the task. And so students will take a 15-item quiz over the Belkin-Mayer chapters 3 and the sections from 4, the articles they read, the insulin lecture that they took notes over, and the animations. They're going to have both multiple choice and short answer questions that are higher level. There's not going to be a whole lot of what is this, what is that kind of questions. It's going to ask them to think deeply about the information. So to prepare for this task, students are going to create and run their own test review. And this is a great strategy for them to learn in high school, because by creating their own quiz review rather than relying on a teacher to supply the review, they really need to be able to select the important information and create a way to learn it. And this kind of a strategy can last them a lifetime, really, and will help them prepare for college-level exams. So students will take the quiz individually, and they'll take it as a group quiz. And the purpose of this is not to make the task easier for students, but to get them to talk about science. And there's been some research done on group quizzes that have said that when the grade is on the line, students are really able to engage. So they will take the quiz first by themselves, so they can't get away with not studying, and that will be worth 2/3 of their score. So when they're done with that, they turn that in and they get the group quiz, which is worth up to 1/3 of their grade. And part of that is the group quiz grade, but also the peer evaluations that they will do. So there's no freeloading on this task. Everybody needs to work, and everybody needs to really think about the science that they've been learning. So the first thing that they'll do is they're going to generate their own test review using 2 strategies. First, a talk through, and the second is a reciprocal questioning strategy. So the first thing that teachers need to do is to teach students to use the strategies. So for the talk through, the first thing to do is to ask students to generate a list of topics. So everything they learned over this semester, or so far over the nutrition unit, what do they need to know for this test? So they need to think about, what did they read in the Belkin-Mayer chapters? What did they learn about outside of those chapters? Thinking about the importance of science processes, thinking about the importance of pulling information together. Just get a big old list and put it up on the board, and then ask students to choose a topic or process to work on. So like, let's say a student picks, I don't know, fats as the thing that they want to work on. That is too small a topic. So that student probably wants to think about that larger topic of macronutrients, to think about ideas as a whole. So it's okay if there's some overlap, that more than one student works on one particular process or concept, but it's also really important that all concepts are covered, so that somebody in the class is creating a talk through over each and every topic that they generate as important. So what they'll do once they have their topic is they'll create a 3x5 card with keyword reminders, and I'm going to show you an example in a second. And basically what they want to be able to do is say the important information from memory, so that they really understand what they're doing, and they just use these keywords to kind of jog their memory so that they can remember what they need to say. They need to practice it a couple times so that they're sure that they understand it. So macronutrients. So even though that was several pages in the textbook, they would kind of boil it down to just a few key words. So they want to know about the 4 types. They want to know uses and concerns, examples, types, the really important information, but they're not going to put all of that on their card. They're just going to put those key words to try to be able to say it all from what they remember. The other strategy they're going to use is reciprocal questioning. And in this strategy, students are going to work in small groups to generate 10 really good questions and jotted down answers. So the answers don't have to be full sentences, bulleted lists are fine, but they need to have enough of an answer so that when they ask a fellow student the question, they know if they're correct or not. So in their academic notebook is a nice chart that they can use so they can put down the question, the jotted down answer, what the source was. So if there's some confusion or some question as they're doing this strategy, they can go right back to the source and double check their information. So a couple of guidelines for students. If you just ask them to predict a test question, they will all come up with a what question. What is this? What is that? So it's really important for them to think about processes, how, why, rather than what questions. So in general, they should avoid what questions, and they should predict short answer questions even though they're going to take a multiple choice exam. And the reason for that is if they predict, one tiny multiple choice question and you ask about some other piece of that concept, they're not ready for it. But if they can ask a broader, short answer type question that encompasses the whole concept, they're going to be much better prepared. So in other words, instead of asking what is an enzyme, it would be much better for them to say, explain the role of enzymes in chemical reactant. That would prepare them a whole lot better for that topic. So asking questions that require application, analysis, interpretation, synthesis, these kind of bigger ideas are more like what the quiz is going to be about and will help them really see if they understand the science rather than just maybe memorizing some terms. So they want to get at that big picture. They also want to ask questions that get students to really think about the topic so that it's not this rote memorization, that they're really going beyond that. And always a general hint for students when they're predicting test questions is that if they find that it takes them more words to ask the question than it would to answer the question, they need to ask a bigger question. So they're going to generate these 10 question and answers in small groups. They're going to have their talk through prepared and practiced. Through these two strategies, they're going to give themselves one heck of a great test review. What will happen is they'll come into class one day and they will do the test review. All you have to really do is kind of keep things moving. So about half the allotted time, let's say it's a 50-minute class period, about 25 minutes for doing the talk-through portion and about 25 minutes for doing the question and answer portion. And with the talk-throughs, just have students pair up in different combinations. So they will say the talk-through to each other in a couple of minutes and then call time and they'll move to a new partner. Call time and they'll move to a new partner. So they hear as many different talk-throughs as they can in about 25 minutes. After that, ask them to get into the groups where they created their test questions. And you can give each group a number if you want to. And then ask them to work with partners that were not in their original question and answer group. The reason is they want to hear everybody else's question and answers. And a lot of times what I do is I make them, into 6 groups that they were for making the questions, and I have one person from group 1 pair up with one person from group 2, and they just ask each other back and forth. And then if they were in group 1, the next round they'll pair up with someone from group 3. But basically they want to hear as many as the questions that were generated by the class as possible. So you can just keep mixing them around jigsaw style so that they get access to as many as possible. And it's important that they do reciprocal questioning. One student asks, the other student answers, and then they switch roles. And so that everybody has a chance to ask and answer questions. They're not going to have time to ask every single question, but as they go, they'll find that some of the groups have similar questions, and they'll have enough to kind of skip around and make sure that they get a really good, solid test review. Once they leave that day, it's a really good idea to ask them to reflect on the process of preparing for and then conducting their own test review and how different that is than when they rely on somebody else to make, a review sheet for them. I think they'll find that taking an active role help them really understand what they knew and what they needed to go back and study for to prepare for the test. So then they'll come in, and activity 4 is taking the quiz. So first they will take the quiz individually, and again, you'll cut that time in half. So if it's a 50-minute class period, the first 25 minutes is to answer the questions individually, and there's 10 multiple choice questions and 5 short answer questions, some of which are diagrams, and it's all for you there in the lesson plans. And then the other half, everybody will turn it in when you call time, 25 minutes, turn in your quiz and get the group quiz. For that quiz, they're just going to get one answer sheet. They'll all put all their names on it, and they're going to answer it together, and they must come to some kind of a consensus on each question, even if it was different from what they put on their original quiz. And the idea is to get them to talk about it and debate it and think back to where they got that information, so that they know, oh no, in the insulin lecture we learned it this way, and that's why I think it's choice B or whatever, so that they're really talking through what they remember and why it was important. After they take their quiz, they're going to go back and evaluate their performance, and they're going to do it in 2 ways. So right after they take the quiz, they can go ahead and do the peer evaluation that is in their academic notebook, and that's where they gauge participation of all their group members, so everybody who they took the quiz with. So that's different from the group that they made the question and answers with. It's the group that they were assigned to take that group quiz. So each person gets a score and an evaluation, and I think it's kind of important for them to do this before they get their grades back, just to reflect on the experience and how they felt everybody was pulling their weight, and that their evaluation is a piece of their score on the group quiz portion of the quiz. Then when they get their own quiz back, they will do an evaluation of their quiz performance. And that's, again, really important metacognitive check on what they knew, how well they knew it, and what they thought about the whole process. So they're going to reflect on what they did well, what they need to work on, what they can do next time. So that's something that'll wait until they get the score back. But it is a really important check for them because they will be taking science quizzes again and again and again. And using that time, rather than just taking their piece of paper and shoving it in their backpack and never looking at it again, but to take the time to reflect on how they did, why they did what they did, and what they might do differently next time, can really get them prepared well for the next time that they take a test. So they want to think about their learning, they think about their approaches to reading and studying in science, and how they think that impacted their score on the quiz. So that is lesson 7 in a nutshell, taking quizzes.